You know, when we look out at the world's glaciers, it is so easy to just see these massive, endless expanses of frozen white water. But what if I told you that you're actually looking at the world's largest, most mysterious cold storage? We're talking about a natural, planetary vault holding literally billions of dollars in lost treasure, entirely extinct biology, and completely unprecedented historical mysteries. So welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unpack the jaw-dropping secrets currently trapped beneath the ice.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because the reality is, when the world's glaciers start to melt, they don't just release water. They release centuries-old stories. They spit out these history-altering secrets that challenge pretty much everything we thought we knew about our planet's past. The ice is basically this massive active time machine, and the vault doors, well, they're finally starting to crack open.
So here is the frozen vault we are unlocking today. We'll start with ancient blood and extinct giants, move right into the human time machine, uncover some hidden fortunes in war machines, unlock Arctic ghost ships, and finally, we'll ask the big question, what else is hiding?
Chapter 1. Ancient Biology of the Ice.
Just think about this incredible contrast for a second. Today, Antarctica is this barren, icy desert, right? But 70 million years ago, it was a lush, green jungle. And we actually know this because back in January 1986, Argentine geologists Eduardo Olivero and Roberto Scasso were braving the freezing winds on James Ross Island when they spotted what looked like a rough stone poking through the ice. But it wasn't a stone. It was a bone. Because of the absolutely brutal weather and the fact that they couldn't exactly drag heavy machinery out there, it took them 10 grueling years to extract what turned out to be an entirely new species of Ankylosaurus. They named it Antarctopelta olivero, literally the very first dinosaur ever pulled from the Antarctic ice.
But hey, the ice doesn't just preserve bones. It actually preserves soft tissue, basically freezing time itself. Fast forward to the freezing Siberian coast of Yukagir. Ivory hunters stumbled upon something out there that honestly sent shivers down their spines. Buried in the permafrost was Yuka, a 39,000-year-old baby woolly mammoth. She was preserved so flawlessly that her golden hair still shined, and the pads of her feet were perfectly soft. But the most shocking discovery? When scientists examined her, they found liquid red blood. It turns out nature gave these mammoths a built-in antifreeze chemical. And incredibly, when cells were extracted back in 2019, some of them were still biologically viable.
Now, compare Yuka with a super recent find from June 2022. A miner named Travis Mudry was digging through the Canadian Yukon permafrost when he uncovered a 30,000-year-old, one-month-old female woolly mammoth. Paleontologist Grant Zazula and his team had to execute this heroic, frantic rescue operation. They extracted this incredibly preserved baby, complete with intact DNA and skin encased in mud, literally just 1 hour before a massive storm hit the site and would have ruined the whole thing.
But it's not just giant prehistoric mammals down there. Up in the Beartooth Mountains of Montana, there is a glacier that isn't white, it's actually gray. And in the early 1900s, geologist J.P. Kimball figured out exactly why. It's literally called Grasshopper Glacier because it contains millions upon millions of extinct Rocky Mountain locusts. Centuries ago, a massive swarm was migrating right over those peaks when a freak blizzard trapped and flash froze them. They were eventually wiped out globally when farmers plowed over their eggs in the American West, but the ice kept this incredible, swarming snapshot of biological history perfectly intact.
All right, moving on to Section 2, the human time machine.
Picture this. You're just hiking the border of Austria and Italy in the Alps. That is exactly what two German tourists were doing in 1991 when they spotted a human body emerging from the melting ice. And no, this wasn't some modern climber who had lost their way. This was Otzi the Iceman, a 5,000-year-old mummy. The ice had essentially acted as this perfect, prehistoric cryogenic chamber for 5 entire millennia.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the sheer amount of data we can extract from a single frozen human being. Thanks to some meticulous ancient DNA research at the University of Innsbruck, we know exactly who Otzi was, and man, we know exactly how much he suffered. He had Anatolian farming ancestry, he dealt with male pattern baldness, and he was lactose intolerant. On top of all that, the guy battled Lyme disease and severe joint pain. When he finally died, he was carrying a bow, a dagger, and a sack. The ice completely humanized this ancient traveler, preserving his tragic final moments with just startling clarity.
Which brings us to Section 3, Frozen Fortunes and War Machines. Let's talk about pure wealth for a second.
During the last ice age, advancing glaciers acted like these massive planetary bulldozers, sweeping up and trapping huge deposits of gold and rocks. Today, as global temperatures rise and these glaciers are melting at completely unprecedented rates, they are literally weeping gold. These melting ice rivers are slowly releasing all those hidden treasures, which is potentially turning some very lucky bystanders into overnight millionaires.
And speaking of lucky bystanders, get a load of this. In 2013, a French hiker was just navigating a glacier on Mont Blanc when he found a metal bottle stamped with the words "Made in India." It actually belonged to the tragic 1966 Indian Airlines Flight 1001 crash. And inside this little frozen time capsule, over 100 precious stones, including emeralds and rubies. Because the original owners couldn't be traced, local laws granted the hiker half the value of the find. He walked away with a cool $169,000 just for taking a hike.
But, sometimes the treasure isn't jewels or gold, sometimes it's sheer engineering. On July 15, 1942, a squadron of WWI planes emergency landed on a Greenland glacier. Over the next 50 years, they were buried under 75 to 90 meters of solid ice. Then, in 1992, this astonishing 11-year, $3 million mission began to retrieve a perfectly preserved P-38 fighter. They used hot water and heating plates to melt a massive tunnel deep into the ice, carefully dismantled the aircraft to haul it up piece by piece, and then spent $500,000 restoring it. Lovingly named Glacier Girl, this absolute marvel of a war machine miraculously flew again in 2002.
All right, Section 4, Unlocking Arctic Ghost Ships.
Just think about how this timeline unfolds. Back in 1845, Sir John Franklin led an expedition with two mighty ships, the HMS Erebus and Terror, trying to find the Northwest Passage shortcut. Well, it was a complete disaster. All 129 men died out there in the freezing Arctic. So in 1850, the British government sent the HMS Investigator on a rescue mission. But by 1853, the Investigator was also trapped in the rootless ice, forcing the crew to abandon ship. Those ships literally vanished to the ocean floor for over 150 years.
Now fast forward way ahead to July 2010. Parks Canada experts set out to find the lost HMS Investigator in Mercy Bay. But here's the cool part. They didn't rely entirely on modern satellite maps. Instead, their ultimate map was oral history. They relied on ancient legends passed down by local Inuit elders, whose ancestors had told tales of finding a strange ship trapped in the ice and extracting iron and copper from it centuries ago.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when you combine that traditional knowledge with modern tech. Following the elders' clues, the team deployed an advanced underwater sonar scanner. And boom! On their very first attempt, the screen lit up with the complete frame of the HMS Investigator, sitting perfectly upright and remarkably intact in the dark ocean depths. Finding this ghost ship completely revitalized the search, and it directly paved the way for scientists to finally locate the HMS Erebus in 2014 and the HMS Terror in 2016.
Which leads us to our final chapter, Section 5. What else is hiding?
To really wrap our heads around what might still be out there, just consider the sheer scale of this. In 1958, a Soviet expedition made a discovery under Antarctica that honestly defies belief. Buried completely out of sight beneath 600 meters of incredibly thick ice, they found the Gamburtsev mountain range. And we are not talking about a small cluster of hills here. It is 1,250 kilometers long, with peaks reaching 3,390 meters high. It perfectly matches the sheer size and scale of the European Alps, yet it remains completely shrouded in mystery, hidden in the pitch black beneath the ice. So, the crucial point to take away from this whole explainer is this. Glaciers are not just stagnant blocks of ice. They are active, natural time capsules, preserving the very fabric of our world's history. As the ice continues to melt at these unprecedented rates, we have to ask ourselves, what ancient virus, what completely lost civilization, or unimaginable treasure are we going to uncover next? Thank you so much for exploring the ice with me today. Keep your eyes on the frost, folks, because the past is just beginning to thaw.